What is up, everybody? It is Dr. Tate here. I'm in the house with another version of Tate Talks, uh, talking about my newest book, The Decline of Black Men's Church Attendance, that is now available for sale on Amazon, Apple, and Google, and shortly and very soon will be on Barnes and Nobles. I am here, none other than a mentor, a friend, someone that I call Unc, and someone that I truly, me and my wife truly adore, none other than Please excuse me, Dr. Zachary Royal, someone that understands this topic very well, someone that is not just hands deep, but he is neck deep in the community doing the Lord's work. Just been a pastor for I don't know. I'll let you introduce yourself, Dr. Roll, who you are, where God has placed you, how many years of service have you been serving with excellence over there, and go ahead. The floor is yours, Dr. Royal.
Thank you, my brother, Dr. Tate. I'm delighted to be with you. Good
Yes.
evening, everyone. My name is Zachary Royal, esteemed pastor of St. Mary First Missionary Baptist Church in Miami, Florida. I've been privileged to serve well over 25 years. I have
Mm.
a wealth of experience, and I also have an affectation of passion for theology, Black liberation theology in particular, but all theology, philosophical, historical, and systematic. I love the Lord. I love the Word. And like Friedrich Daniel Ernst Schleiermacher, I'm trying to be a faithful servant of the Word.
Wow. Wow. That is so nothing short but amazing. 25 years in a place that God has placed you serving. Um, why is that so important, ladies and gentlemen? Let me just give you a statistic. Now, in today's current status, pastors do leave the pulpit within a span of 5 to 6 years. That is the average. It has decreased. That number of years has decreased, Dr. Rowe. You know this better than I do, since COVID because of the lack of support, the issues that go on inside the home, outside the home, and the communal issues is far too great beyond their scope and their reach to where they feel overwhelmed that they cannot address the needs appropriately for
Definitely.
the community.
Like
So
a
they
like a running back in the NFL. Snap
exactly
will not be long. And you
right.
need to avoid the dangers along the bench, not simply on the field.
Absolutely. Well said, well put. And as you can see, my guest is ready to go, and we're going to dive right into it, sir. And I'm going to hit you with this first question right here, and let's get this thing started. Yeah, my first question to you is historically, how has are the Black church served as a pillar in the community? In what way has the decline of Black male attendance affected this role? Because in my book, I talked about, and me and you've had this great discussion. The Black church has been, at one point, it was the epicenter of the community. It was the one stop shop, as I could say. It was when you needed help with groceries, you would go to the church. If you needed your children for a tutor, you would go to the church. If you ran into some legal issues, you would go to the church, and so on and so forth. It was literally the epicenter of the community in which we all ran into it, and when we ran out, we were that much better and that much more equipped, not just spiritually, but also for our physical needs and daily needs as well. So
Right.
the floor is yours. How as a Black church served as a pillar in the community, and how's the Black male attendance affected this role because of the decline in it?
Let's see if I can couch that in terms that are fair yet meaningful. The African American church was born fighting for freedom.
Mm, yes, sir.
The African American church represents the first multicultural effort in North America to
Mm,
think the faith of Jesus Christ. The hallmark of the African American church is their rejection of the slaveholders' church,
come on now.
which was the 20th, the 18th, the 19th, and the 20th, and now the 21st century version of Constantinian Christianity.
Correct.
It's always been Christianity with a sword, or in this instance in North America, Christianity with a shackle.
Mm. My gosh. Oh my goodness.
It said basically that in order for Christianity to be successful in North America, people of color must be subjugated,
Mm.
and subjugated in Christological ways. They were subjugated ontologically simply for being who they were.
Come on now.
The African American church is important because there's a magnificent work that we need to be that I'm going to bring to the forefront, and it's by that wonderful senator, one of my colleagues, the Reverend Dr. Raphael Warnock.
Wow.
He has a book entitled "The Divided Mind of the Church." In the book, he says the divided mind of the Black church.
Okay.
In the book, he states that the African American church not only was, but still is, the most viable entity in the African American community,
Mm-hmm.
not because it's been used, but because it hasn't.
Wow.
Four things came out of the African American church, and they have enhanced North American religion and Christianity as we know it.
Mm-hmm.
Number one was an authentic liberation Christianity.
Okay.
The second thing was an authentic liberation church.
You're right.
The third thing was an authentic liberation movement. And
Yes.
finally, after the 1960s, an authentic liberation theology.
Uh-huh.
James Howell Cohen, his magnificent book, Black Theology and Black Liberation, or Black Theology and Black Power, talks about how every theology is quintessentially liberational
Yes, sir.
when it understands that Jesus Christ is synonymous with setting the captives free.
That's what he came to do. Yes. In fact, that's what he read in the scrolls when he first went to the church. I mean, to the synagogue, as the scripture says, and I'm
Luke 4.
paraphrasing, that he opened the scroll
Luke 4.
to Isaiah and he
Yeah,
read such scripture.
he did.
And that was his mission statement for the remainder of the years that he was here.
Absolutely.
And so I appreciate the fact. No, I'm sorry, you still need to do 3 and 4. I apologize. I
Oh, no,
interjected.
no, no. We did the fourth. The fourth one is the liberation Christianity, and you're
Yes.
absolutely right. And notice what you just talked about when Jesus quoted Isaiah or read
Mhm.
from Isaiah in Luke 4. The
Yes.
scroll was given to him. He didn't have
Yes.
a Bible like we had. He found the place where it was written.
Yes. Yes.
Rabboni Jesus. He
Yes.
found the place. And then when he found the place, he identified his messianic mission
Yes.
with his own unique ontological self-understanding.
Hmm.
And that's why his theology, his self-assertion is so important for us today. Because
Yes.
it was his self-understanding that
Yes.
becomes our self-understanding when
Right.
we take the gospel seriously.
Yes.
It becomes an can I quote Karl Barth?
Well, the floor is yours.
Word of God, word of man, it becomes an impossible possibility.
Yes.
It becomes something we cannot do. But through Jesus Christ, we must do
Wow.
because the impossible has been made possible.
Yes. Absolutely. And I believe um, you know better than I. In some translations in Luke, at the very end, it says, "Come to set the captives free." But a lot of translations do not, they leave off that tail end part right there. The
Yes,
acceptable year of the Lord,
yes.
the
And
liberation
what
fear of
school
the
you went to, Greg, Dr. Tate,
Lord.
determines whether or not you embrace that sentence
Exactly.
or abandon it.
Right.
And the history of North American Christianity is hinged upon the abandonment of that clause.
Right.
Because
Exactly.
North American Christianity, white conservative Christianity in particular, is determined to get away with all it can.
Right.
It is determined to do everything possible to avoid worshiping Jesus.
Mm. Why is that so, sir? Why is that such a It's almost now, especially now today's church. I live in Texas, and me and you both are in the Bible Belt, so Christianity is the norm, quote unquote, here in the South. But it seems not only do we see the decline of black men, but we see the decline of the separation of us and Jesus.
Yes.
Simply put, if I could just be bold with it, and simply put, it is no longer, it is the focus and the gaze is on him, but now the focus and the gaze on what can we do, what programs do we have, and what missions and what achievements are we trying to accomplish. Can you please share, as a pastor but also as a community activist, how this affects the community in such in micro and in macro?
Wow. 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 That's a profound question. Let's see if we can tackle some of it. I think there's a reason why Christianity is construed the way it is,
Mhm.
particularly in the Bible Belt, of which Texas is the buckle.
Yes.
I think it has something to do with this notion that beyond the notion of Constantinian Christianity
Hmm.
is this notion that imperialism is synonymous with the faith as well.
Okay.
That when it's all said and done, how do we we come to this notion that uh, the God of Constantine
Hmm.
and the God of Bull Connor and the God of Donald Trump is somehow the God of persons who are successful. And when it's all said and done, the notion of vulture capitalism is
Hmm.
raised above the
Yeah.
idea of Christianity.
Right.
That's really where we are.
Right.
Uh, I can't say it any other way. And I think, especially, one of the reasons that makes Texas so difficult to live in is that persons do things in the name of Jesus Christ.
Mm. Come
Uh,
on.
you can't get around it. Let's see if I can get close to it. November the 1st, 1829,
Hmm.
Friedrich Schleiermacher stood at the grave of his son Nathaniel,
Right.
and he preached a sermon at his grave. What's so significant about that? It's that some people do not have a problem when the children are dying.
Come on now.
And this Christianity that's construed in North America is construed at the expense of bodies of color
Wow.
that do not
Wow.
matter.
Wow. Mm.
No one's weeping at their grave.
Mm.
No one is showing emotion. No one is concerned about the bodies that are piling up.
Come
And
on.
Elie Wiesel, in that magnificent novel Night, says that the church can never talk about theology
Mm.
when babies' bodies are burning.
Wow.
That's what's happening. And
Right.
when Christianity is responsible for bodies that pile up, and there is no word about that. And that silence in itself is the indictment.
Come on.
That's the problem. When
Correct.
when a Christianity can condemn an entire ethnicity
Hmm.
to the abyss of nothingness, when they can watch silently while generations of people of color are remanded to the hinterlands of American life.
Right.
There's no word or no recourse or no comeback. That indeed speaks a lot about the Christianity that at the last state in the final analysis isn't Christianity at all, my brother.
Yes. Come on. Come on.
And we
I heard it said like this, Dr. Royal, that one of the objectives of our adversary is, the things that we see that's going on, but he tries, and that one of his number one goals is to create so much chaos and so much heartache and so much grief is that so Christians can become silent.
Yes.
Is that because when we are silent, then we are complacent. And if we are complacent, then we are comfortable. And then we are comfortable. I heard revealed to me that comfortability is the silent killer of
Uh-huh.
destiny.
Uh-huh.
Because if we're comfortable, we're not going to stretch. If we're comfortable, we're not going to grow. If we're comfortable, we're not going to push beyond the boundaries that were set before us. We're going to be okay with the restrictive bands that have been placed on us because we're comfortable.
And there's something else at stake too.
Mm,
When one stands idly by
mhm.
and one is infatuated with God talk while plain ordinary people suffer,
Right.
then the people who pastor those people are often guilty of deicide,
Hmm.
swallowing their own oppression whole. One of the reasons that the African American church can't be let off the hook for this is because Toni Morrison's beloved helps us here. People in America, especially the African American church and conservative Christians, live in a haunted house.
Wow. Absolutely.
We have
Please.
wraiths and ghosts that will chase us all over the place. And the problem is, it's in the middle of the day and no one will open a window.
Wow. Come on now.
That's problematic. It's
Yes.
problematic. It's problematic because the church suffers because of a self-induced darkness.
Mm. Wow, a self-induced darkness. We have gone from a messianic centric belief to a very me-centric belief.
Absolutely. And that me-centric belief has to do with a kind of rugged individualism
Hmm.
that says I can match whatever we see on television
Come on, yeah,
with what we do in the church.
right.
It is this wholesale appropriation of John Wayne Christianity.
Yes,
It's this idea that we can do it by ourselves.
right.
But in reality, what we're doing is killing. What we're doing is destroying. And it's not just destroying our communities, it is
Hmm.
ecologically destructive.
Yes.
And that's what theologians don't talk about a lot these days. And here's how that looks. There's a macrocosmic and a microcosmic reality when it comes to Christianity in America today.
Please
What
continue.
we do to each other individually
Hmm.
is a map, if you will. It is a cartography, if you will, of
Come
what
on.
we're doing to our environment and to our world.
Mm.
But our arrogance is it only goes as far as planet Earth, because God reminds us that even if we blow up this planet, God's plans will continue uninterrupted.
Heaven and earth shall pass away. Come on.
There's no doubt about it.
Hmm.
And I think Tillich helps us here. Paul Johannes Oscar Tillich, 1886 to 1965. There isn't a sense of existential seriousness
Hmm.
with the Christianity that we have today.
Right.
And not only that, if we waited in the dark long enough in this haunted house, even if we never opened a window,
Right.
God can give us the ability to attune our eyes to the darkness.
Hmm.
There is a luminosity at the heart of Christianity. Our forebears could see in the dark. My
Come on. Come
my
on.
grandmama had a Christianity that involved a darkly radiant vision.
Yes, 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 yes.
Doc- Dr. Gary Dorian, if I can use my advisor, that is, we could see things others couldn't see. William Edward Burghardt Du Bois talked about this second sight, this
Mm.
being born in a veil,
Come
uh,
on.
being born in a fashion
Yeah,
that
yeah.
divorces a constructive relationship with the oppressor, and the
Right.
dominant Christianity, but gives us a kind of victory over the oppressor,
Hmm.
even though we don't have contact with the oppressor.
Wow.
fortifies our Christianity and makes it something that nourishes those who cannot nourish themselves. And it
Yes.
stands on the platform as a public witness to what Christianity ought really be.
Amazing. Simply just amazing. For those that are just tuning on, I am with the esteemed scholar and community activist, Dr. Zachary Royal, and we are discussing my book, The Decline of Black Men's Church Attendance. And we are just unpacking just a very select part or portion of the book. And we're doing it from a communal aspect, understanding that the church is a community that's called out, not an individual, but it's a community.
Yes.
The ecclesia is a group, and me and my wife literally just had a conversation the other day that when he calls somebody, he doesn't call somebody individually, Dr. Royal, but he calls the entire family. When
Yes.
Moses got called, it was a Zipporah that also came with him. It was his children that upheld him. And
Yes.
when the priests were called, it was their family that's with it. And
Yes.
for
Yes.
some reason, from
Yes.
shape way or another, I go into it in my book a little bit. Where we lost our we and became me, where we lost our sense of family
Mm-hmm.
and it became an individual aspect.
Definitely.
I remember stories hearing that when a family or a person would move across the country, it wasn't just that one person, Dr.
Right.
Royal.
Right.
That entire family went with them. You're not going without
Correct.
support. You're not
Correct.
going without family. You're not
Correct.
going without, you don't know anybody's name. We're going to go as a unit. We're going to go as a community
Correct.
to establish you.
Yes.
And we have lost that in today's church. We have lost that in today's community,
Sir. Yes.
and almost to the fact where, you know, and though me and my wife had a discussion the other day as well, is the the dichotomy, the fight between physically going to church
Uh-huh.
or remaining online and watching church from home. And we see the both, that there's cons and pros for both. And
Yes.
church online is absolutely amazing, and it was
Yes.
pivotal for the time of COVID, and it was pivotal when we are sick, and it's pivotal
Yes.
when we can't when we have restrictions to go. But
Yes.
there's something there
Yes.
in the house, Dr. Roy.
Yes.
There's
Yes.
something there
Yes.
when I get to touch another brother's hand and hold it and empathize what he is going through. There's something
Absolutely.
there when we all shout hallelujah together. There's something there in
Mm-hmm.
the house. There's a specific residue that
Yes.
resonates in our heart, that's in the
Absolutely.
sanctuary, that cannot be reproduced over the airways.
Correct.
And us being there, it
Yes.
allows us to see that we know what, I'm not in this thing by myself.
Correct.
I
Listen,
am not. I am
you.
not alone, but I am now a part of a community,
Yes.
and I am a part of a nation that
Aha.
is chasing after God.
Aha. Now mm, you're talking about the great Hegel,
Mm,
who speaks so eloquently in two of his major works. Um, one of them being the Encyclopedia of Logic,
mm,
the other one, the Phenomenology of Spirit.
mm.
He talks about the kind of God we serve. Worship is interactive
Correct.
because God is polysociological.
Come on now. Yes.
Hegel dares to talk about a God that is incomplete in and by God's self. A God that refuses to live alone.
Come on.
A God that can maintain omnipotence, but blasts it and destroys it in order that that which is not God can know God.
Come on, sir. He's just getting warmed up, yo. Come on.
And so he writes this book about the phenomenology, phenomenology of spirit. He's talking about what happens
Yeah.
when divinity comes to consciousness.
Yes.
What happens when everyday ordinary people become aware of that which transcends them? And here's what he says. Here's what he says. He says that we come face to face with the reality that the human spirit in worship, he goes further. I'll talk about that. Comes face to face with the divine spirit.
Hmm.
And that doesn't happen in a hovel or in a corner.
Right.
The problem with this preoccupation with Zoom and what we do, it's profoundly good, but
Yes.
it's also profoundly dangerous because the internet is the constant reminder of the depth of human estrangement.
Mm.
We're online
Yes.
because we're profoundly separated.
Yes.
And that's not overcome by being even more so.
Right.
Coming to church is the ontological, it's the existential act that overcomes estrangement.
Right.
That's why church is important.
Right.
It means that I have to change where I am
Right.
in order to relate to that which is beyond my understanding.
And just circling back to what you said in the very beginning, that where was Jesus to be found?
Ah,
He was found in the synagogue. He was found in the temple. He was found at
yes,
church.
yes. And
That's where we found him.
that's where it is, Dr. Tate. That is religion. The faith is found
Mm.
when the human spirit comes face to face with the divine spirit, and that happens in church. Now, the
Hmm.
definition has to stretch to be sure,
Hmm.
but it has to do with what has become, in many instances, cyber estrangement, which leads to cyber sin.
Mm.
It's difficult to stand up for people online who bully others if you haven't learned something collectively amongst people.
Come on now.
It's that learning, that knowledge, that how did how does Socrates say it in Plato's Republic? He talks about how mhm, justice is the work of piety.
Mm.
not some not some pie in the sky, ethereal, effervescent something, but this determination to right oneself and to live one's life in relation to the gods,
Right.
in relation to the eternal, in
Right.
relation to a triune God who through Jesus Christ reminds us just how important being together is. That's why at the center of everything that Jesus does is a table.
Come on. Come on. The
It
ultimate
means
symbol of community
I've
right
got to
there.
get over something in
Yeah.
order to find myself in fellowship.
Right. Yes. Yes. Absolutely. For those again that are just logging on, this is getting good. This is I am Dr. Gregory Tate. I am with my esteemed guest, the scholar and community activist, Dr. Zachary Royal. We're talking about my book, The Decline of Black Man's Church Attendance from a Communal Perspective. The book can be found on Apple and Google and on soon and Amazon. I apologize. And we're just diving in and getting this conversation is getting good. Before we go too much more into that very rabbit hole, I want to ask you another question that provokes a conversation of its own, and it is how do we see the relationship between church attendance
Mhm,
and community engagement?
mhm.
I think they're synonymous. I think they're one and the same, and they're particularly among brothers, and particularly ones that people that look like you, me and you, Dr. Royal. And what is the impact does the absence of black men in church have on the broader community? So let's
Great
if
question.
we
Great
can
question.
unpack that bad boy just a
And I
little
think
bit.
great question, Greg. Excellent question or questions. And I think it leads to the heart of our discussion tonight.
Mm.
And I think at the heart of our discussion is
It's 9 o'clock.
a magnificent book by a person named J. Paul Hines.
Hmm.
He wrote a book entitled A Gift Grows in the Ghetto. And the heart of our
Wow.
conversation tonight is simply this: Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall.
Right.
All the king's horses
Mm-hmm.
and all the king's men
Right.
couldn't put Humpty Dumpty back together again.
Yes.
When you talk about black men, your desperate cry in your book, everybody talks about Humpty Dumpty's fall, even the poet.
Mm-hmm.
No one talks about which side of the fence Humpty Dumpty fell on.
Wow.
You see,
Wow.
you see the problem, Greg, with African American men and female in the community is if Humpty Dumpty falls on the wrong side of the wall,
Right.
his black life doesn't matter.
Mm.
If Humpty Dumpty falls on the other side of the wall, his black life has no meaning.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
Let's unpack that a little bit.
Yeah, because the dichotomy of that wall, either way, either I'm ignored
Mhm.
or I'm
Yes.
not even seen.
Yes, yes. Or let's bring in the master. Let's bring in the novelist Ralph Ellison.
Hmm.
Maybe you're just an invisible woman
Come on.
or an invisible man. And on the first page of that magnificent book, he says, I'm invisible not because I'm some Hollywood ectoplasm. I'm not invisible because I can't see. I'm invisible because people refuse to see me.
See me. Hmm.
My humanity has been denied. Now, if that happens, something terrible can occur.
Right.
What can occur? Um, I can be guided on that other side of the wall by the logic of racism.
Hmm.
And the logic of racism is genocide.
Mm. So true.
And that's what 1945 was about. And
Right.
that's what January the 6th was about.
Right.
That's what Charlottesville was about.
Hmm.
When you had persons walking around in the 21st century screaming, Blacks will not replace us.
Mm.
The logic of that is that, but we will replace them.
Yeah.
And they're doing that in the name of the God,
Right.
the Bible, or at least that's what they say.
Right.
Okay, so now what's happening? There's nothing on the other side of the wall that can attend to your collective health or your communal concern.
Right.
The only thing waiting on that wall is a series of institutions
Right.
that will not only ignore you, but if
Hmm.
you find yourself in the wrong place at the wrong time, you're roadkill.
Mm.
Uh, uh, and I'm really thinking about some things. Okay, well, what about the other side, Greg? What about the other side of the wall?
Right. Exactly.
Okay, now, this is the kicker. This is the kicker. And Hines talks about this so eloquently. He talks about this piece. A woman named Sylvia Winter,
Hmm.
uh, who who she had some colleagues in academia. She's a psychologist, and
Hmm.
she was talking about the Rodney King beating.
Right.
How Rodney King was simply just pummeled nearly to death,
Right.
broken teeth, fractured skull, and all of that.
Correct.
She said that the police, before they went into the African American community, were given this communication:
Wow. Mm.
NHI, no humans involved.
Wow.
That gave them, the police, the understanding that what they were doing had nothing to do with addressing human beings. That's why
Oh
they beat Rodney King within an inch of his life.
my gosh.
Ah,
Oh my
that's why
gosh.
Michael Brown can be shot dead. That's why Breonna Mitchell can lose her life going to sleep,
Right.
because that's exactly what happens. HNHI, that whatever's in the African American community cannot be human.
Mm.
And then Hines slams it. And I think this is the heart of your book. He says the reason that that's so is because politicians believe the same thing. And the reason that's so is because they believe that in the African American community,
Mm-hmm.
there are no humans,
Okay.
there is no God,
Uh.
and there are no gifts.
Wow.
What do you do? And look at the rise of Black rappers who are standing on Trump's political stage, gold chains in tow, dapping him down and saying that I have more in common with Trump than I do with Biden or with Black people.
Mm-hmm.
Or Ice Cube saying Black folk ain't done nothing for me. I ain't got to do nothing for them. Where did we come to this nihilism?
Mm-hmm.
Where did we come to this notion? Because you can't learn that in church.
Right.
And that's the problem. Okay, so now if that's the case, then why do we need church attendance?
Mm-hmm.
We need something more than church attendance, my
Correct.
brother.
Yeah.
We need a prophetic spirituality.
Yes. And
That's what's at stake.
let me say it like this, Dr. Roy. As long as I've been walking with God, and it's not as long as you have, but I've noticed in God's duality of thought and God's duality of creation and how he moves. God is a God of balance and God is a God of order. He created the sun and he also created the moon. He created the mountains and he also created the ocean. He created man. He also created woman. He does things in balance and in order. God has an impeccable checks and balances. So if we are made in his image, we're also made with balance and order that's already innate in us. And if something is off, something has to replace what is off. So if we are created to be in relationship and worship with him, but that is now removed from our daily activity and our daily our daily everyday life.
Yes.
There is something there. If you're not worshiping God, I'll say it plainly. If you're not worshiping God,
yes,
you're worshiping something.
Yes.
Because we are created to do so.
Yes.
So, in the absence of us being in church, and in my book, I talk about various reasons that I've had why we do so in my academic survey, and it's not all of them. I'll just make a disclaimer: that's not all the reasons why we don't show up. But in that, we see that there are specific reasons why we do not show up. But something in that absence. It's not complete. There's no complete absence. There's something replacing that. You're showing up somewhere. You're doing something.
Can I blow your mind?
Please go ahead.
Let me see if I can blow my own. In some ways, what the scriptures teach us is that the God that we think that is so rational and in order ain't the God that God is resting on.
Okay.
Let me explain. Friedrich Schelling talks about, he has a magnificent book, 1911, entitled Ages of the World. He says that reality doesn't rest on order. It rests upon radical dissidence.
Wow.
Reality rests upon a God that disrupts everything.
So true.
Greg, think about it. Isn't that what the resurrection is all about? It is the divine disruption of everything.
Yes, so true.
It is the potter that breaks his work in order to remold and recast it again. And so here's what he says in this 1911 masterpiece: that God, by God's self, wasn't even governed by reason, but reason is at the core of all that God is. But to be the creator God, God steps back from reason and moves into divine illogic.
Come on, break it down.
What does that mean? God steps away from everything that isn't God so that everything that isn't God can come to be.
Come on.
And so it's not reason that is at the heart of God's movement away in order to embrace all that is. It's love.
Yes.
It's a radical perichoretic love, one of my favorite
Yes.
words. That God isn't somehow some reality that just sits on a throne. God
Right.
is like a full-fledged fountain.
Mm-hmm.
The triune God is perichoretic. It empties itself in the other.
Yes.
The
Yes.
other might empty itself in God.
Mm-hmm.
And this emptying, this kenosis, is at the heart of what it means to be Jesus Christ.
Mm.
Jesus Christ brings a kind of self-emptying. He brings this notion that life isn't life until we're willing to protect all of life.
Come on.
Reason says that there's some people that are some creatures that I don't have to love, that I
Mm.
don't have to nurture.
Mm-hmm.
But love says, the divine illogic, one theologian calls it the coincidence of opposites. He said, this God says, I'll love everything because, as Karl Barth says, I will live and love in freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And freedom means that I attend to each and every blade of grass, because as Walt Whitman says, a blade of grass is the journey work of the stars.
Come on.
That's what God is about. And so God
Yes.
backs up from this notion of the misuse of logic.
Mm.
And God reminds us that at the heart of the universe isn't just logic, it's that which transcends, that which logic breaks itself on.
Right.
When we use words about God, we have to be certain that what we're talking about ain't God. Because if what we're talking about is God, we ain't talking about God.
Mm. So true. So true. So true.
So the question is, okay, where does the rubber meet the road? The
Mm.
question is, how can we become these persons who are empathetic? How can we become persons who are the inheritors of the imago Dei?
Mm-hmm.
How can we image? How can we place in a visible and a viable way what it means to be concerned about the roots of people and not just the branches?
Right. Come on. Come on.
And
That's
that's where we are.
yeah.
That's where we are. And that takes the kind of spirituality that takes radical love seriously. It's a
Mm.
love that disturbs. It's a kind of, it has almost Socratic orientation. It's a
Wow.
God-like gadfly. God gets in the crawl of where you are. He sits in
Come
your
on.
saddle, underneath
Yes.
your saddle, and your
Yes,
horse
sir.
is bucking, but you don't understand why.
Yes, sir.
It's not bucking to come back to church.
Mm-hmm.
It's bucking to change your life.
A love that disturbs. That's just wow. 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 That is powerful. I love that. That's just resonating with me right now. I love that disturbs.
Absolutely.
Because if I
Because
truly do love, it's that, like I said, the comfortability is a silent killer. And anything in any destiny, whether it's theology, whether it's athletics,
yes,
whether it's in your marriage, whether it's a comfortability is just the
yes,
it's a silent killer of
yes,
all, because I'm not allowed to reach outside my comfort zone, because
yes,
if so, I'm no longer comfortable. And
yes,
what love does is what you're saying, and what I describe in my book too, is it love disrupts.
yes,
Jesus coming in
yes,
human form disrupted things.
yes,
The
yes,
way he came
yes,
disrupted things. How
yes,
he lived his life, just as
yes,
the Pharisees, it
yes.
disrupted some things.
And
As
that
the
kind of
wrong.
and that
Yes.
kind of Christology, that kind of Christology saves us from Jesuology,
Yes.
which is in the buckle of the Bible Belt all throughout the South, where they're happy with Jesus alone, but no one said a word about his father.
Ah.
And that's all he talked about.
Come on. That's
That's
all it
what's
is.
wrong with Christianity in the South.
Mm-hmm.
This undue focus on Jesus, when Jesus's focus was on his Father and water and spirit. That was why he had this convo with Nick at night.
That's creative. I like that. Yes, Nicodemus.
That's
Yeah,
what the
yeah,
Nick
yeah,
at
yeah.
night conversation was all about.
Yeah.
That the only way one could enter life is with a real, relevant relationship with a triune God.
Yes.
The God of Jesus Christ, not Jesus Christ, but God in relation. And that's why one theologian says it so eloquently. In the beginning wasn't just God. In the beginning was communion.
Oh, wow.
It's the only thing that was. This desire for God to be God in relationship, this spiraling concern that moves into one, moves back out, and moves in again, that circles each other, that
Mm-hmm.
interpenetrates each other.
Right.
And why? Because reason isn't why God does what God does. Freedom is.
Come on.
God dares to be free in and of God's self. And
Yes,
in
it
that
does.
way, God can be gracious with you and me.
Yes. Wow. Where I'm saddened that we have to shut this down pretty soon within the next 20 minutes. But in doing so, if you have any questions, you have any comments, please write them in the chat in the chat and see if we can answer some of these questions that you have concerning this topic, concerning about my book, The Decline of Black Man's Church Attendance. Feel free to write your questions. Feel free to write any comments, and I and Dr. Royal will be happy to further elaborate and pontificate on such questions. And as we going in, as we are concluding, sir, as much as I don't, as much as I want to hold on to your coattails of time, I have to let you go, and I have to release you in a short amount of time. But let's end it with this, because you describe it's not just the church attendance that is the solution. What is the totality of the solution as far as returning back to a community mindset, to living knowing that my life is no longer my own, but I've been bought with a price. I cannot live, act, talk, think, nor maneuver through the realm of this earth all by myself, thinking that it's all about me, but I belong to somebody,
Right.
and I'm accountable to somebody. I'll say it like this, because a lot of a lot of black colloquialisms has been said in many households. I had a mother and father that says, when you leave this house, it's not just about you.
Yeah. Yeah.
You represent me as
Yeah.
well.
Let me tell you how it worked in my house. When I left my house, Daddy would always tell us, Zachary, remember whose child you are.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're trying to do. Now, I started with Schleiermacher. I think I'll end with Schleiermacher. I think that's one of the reasons why his Glaubenslehre, the Christian faith, that's what that's called in German. His book, The Christian Faith. Now, his first book on religion, speeches to the despisers of religion, the culture despisers of religion, 1799. But his masterpiece, 1821, The Christian Faith, says that one of the things that we have to note is that being a Christian means that one is already a part of a community.
Come on.
Unarticulated. And why is that important? Because two things happen. He says life hangs like a chandelier on this, what he calls this notion of radical dependence. This understanding that I am connected, even though I am not physically aware of that which I'm connected to. And so he writes about two things. He says the experience of Christian faith, of the Christian faith, does one thing. First thing it does, it reminds you that you belong to Jesus Christ. There's a Christocentric reality there.
Right.
Most important reality is that we belong to God. And it's his determination to think through that, to understand what dependence means, this sense of immediacy. From the moment we open our eyes, from the moment we're consciously aware, God is involved because
Mhm.
as Anselm, I'm sorry, as not just Anselm, but one of the finest philosophers of the church used to say, at the end of the day, the reason that I can see the light is because I'm standing in a light that I cannot see.
Mm. Wow. Simply wow. That is amazing. That is exactly um, the depiction that we need. That is exactly the direction that we need to be striving for. And it is not just, it's not just on a spiritual level. It is on an everyday level. And so it is a, not just a contemporary, but it is how am I trying to say this? I'm trying to say it like this. If we can understand that we belong to a greater whole,
Yes,
but we understand that the beauty of who we are as an individual is even more beautiful when you put that last puzzle piece together.
yes. Greg, we belong to God. We belong to Christ. Because of Christ, we belong to God. Why in the world are we so fearful of belonging to one another?
Come on now. Come on now. I want to address this question. It comes from one of our viewers. Oh, Dr. Annette says, what advice would you give single mothers raising sons on significance of their attendance in the Black church? And what retention efforts should the Black church employ?
Magnificent book by Dolores Saniva Williams entitled Sisters in the Wilderness.
Mm.
That's what you are, Dr. Annette. You are a sister in the wilderness. Embrace your Hagar.
Come on now.
The experience of God for Hagar is different from the experience of Sarah and
Hmm.
Abraham.
Hmm.
It is an experience for a mother and a son beyond the pale of the Jewish covenant.
Hmm.
God dares to answer a question that Abraham and Sarah never asked.
Yes.
That's Dr. Annette's question. If you're locked out of the tradition, if you feel like you don't belong, does God still care? And can God still get in touch with you? Can God still ring your can God still ring your doorbell?
Mm.
And she raises a son in the wilderness.
Uh-huh.
Do you know his name? What's his name, Dr. Greg? Hagar's son.
You got Hagar, so you had
Yeah.
Isaac that was a
You got,
promise,
you
and
got,
then you also
you got
have Esau,
Ishmael.
Ishmael.
Ishmael. Ishmael and Hagar are the prime example of what a mother who's raising her son on the significance of church attendance means to the Black church, because bringing our sons to the Black church along with their mothers who bring their sons to church are stepping out of the wilderness.
Mm.
They're understanding God afresh. They're understanding God anew. What has God done for you that the church hasn't seen?
Uh.
How can you rely upon your womanist orientations to appreciate that God doesn't just move in covenant, God stands outside of a covenant to bring everyone into the covenant?
My God. My God, I told you my guess is dangerous. The good doctor Zachary Royal, I told y'all he is dangerous. He is relevant and he is potent to what is going on today. That is why he is such beloved persons in his community and in his church. We understand that, it is not about a me a mentality, but it is a we mentality.
Yes.
And I hope that answers your question, Dr. Annette. Thank you for that question. And as we wind down, sir, I want to give you the prophetic room and you got about 30 seconds to 60 seconds. And I want you to pour as God sees fit, encourage, empower, and uplift the very communal aspect on which we are talking about, so that the one that might feel estranged may now be welcomed back into the camp.
I'll do the best I can. I'm believing in my heart of hearts that Eugene O'Neill was right. No, he was wrong. Life as we know it in the African American community, especially, is not the long day's journey into night. It's the long night's journey into day.
Mm.
You're on your way somewhere. And I think that the African American church must formulate a creative theological response and refutation of Thrasymachus. Okay, that's a long story.
Mhm.
Socrates says that there has to be an answer to the nihilism that stalked his day, and we need an answer for the Afro-pessimism that stalks ours.
Mm.
So what is that about? It's about a journey together. It's about understanding that we're not just a part of one another, but that we're called to sojourn together,
Yes.
that our life together is as important. It's not just at the table, but it's the walk from Emmaus.
Yes.
That's what's important, to find our hearts burning once again.
Yes.
He talked with us, by the way. And so I want to encourage us that hopelessness is not an option, because we serve a God that can empower us to hope when hope unborn has died.
Mm. Wow.
God is alive and well, and we can trust that darkly radiant vision to give us light in the middle of a darkened place.
Yes. Amen. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I have nothing else further to say, but simply wow. And thank you for joining us, Dr. Royal. Thank you for your time. I know that your time is very precious and very short. So I thank you for being my esteemed and special guest on this Tate Talks. And I appreciate you all, that everyone that is on right now. I appreciate y'all. Thank y'all again. My book, The Decline of Black Man's Church Attendance, is now available on Apple, Google, and it is also on Amazon. I want you all to get your copy, because next week I have another special guest for part 3. This is only part 2. Again, I don't even know. I play sports, but in sports, we believe in warming up before we go out there and perform. My first 2 guests don't even warm up. They just go out and smacking grand slams. And so I am just blown away by what God is doing through this. And I thank you so much again for being on here. Thank you for my listeners that are being on there. If you have not already, share and comment on this video. Send this to somebody that is struggling of going back to church, or what it is that to be a part of a community, or what it is that, why do I need to serve God when I can just turn on the TV at home? Send this to them. Show them that this. You know what? You are good. I'll say it like this. A certain singer says it like this: "I'm good all by myself, but with you, you make me better." Yeah. Just understand that together we're better. Together we're better. Together we're better. Thank you guys for your time. We love y'all. This has been another edition of Table Talks. And you know what? We'll see you again next week. We thank you again. And we're gone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Tate. God bless you all.